Someone's going to come to see me.
Hello everybody. We're a bit loud. Just sorting out our technical difficulties. Hello, that's better. Hello everyone. Sorry that I've been away for 3 weeks now. So this show is a catch-up show. It's and we've got lots to discuss. So if you're watching on Facebook Live, please share the Facebook Live. That would be brilliant. And if you're listening to the Breaking the Cycle radio show on Power Extra Radio, welcome. So, where have I been for 3 weeks, you say? I have been on holiday, and I've also going to share some really private and, well, just to keep you up to date really what's going on in my life, because as you all know, I am a survivor of childhood abuse, and the impact of childhood abuse we shared on this show in quite some detail. But I've actually had an episode of where I have been impacted, and we received some information about our childhood, and actually seeing some of the paperwork in black and white from 30 years ago has had quite a huge impact on me. It's caused me quite a lot of emotional distress. My back pain and my hip pain have flared up. So I've spent a week really trying to sort out whether my pain is to the emotional distress or whether it is actually physical pain that's caused from an imbalance of my muscles after my hip replacement. So I've had some scans done on my back, I've had some scans done on my hips. The scans have come back clear, and I've also seen a NKT specialist that's helping me trying to sort out the dysfunctional patterns in my muscles and how I walk and how I move. That has actually helped me a great deal. But all of the emotional distress and seeing things in black and white from 30 years ago has had a massive impact on my mood. I felt a bit flat, I've had no energy, and to be blunt, I've had no get up and go to do things above and beyond what is necessary. I wouldn't say I'm depressed, but I would definitely say that this has impacted me wanting to get on and do stuff. And that's not a bad thing, because sometimes it's really important that we actually take stock of how we are thinking and feeling, and how we are responding to that. And my normal for responding to this is do more, keep busy. My back and my hip have not allowed me to do that. In fact, I've had to actually take a lot of steps back and just be with the pain and be with the thoughts and the feelings and deal with them. So the last 3 weeks I've had to step back. I cancelled my radio show last week, and I just thought I just need to be me, and I need to just try and recover and be kind to myself. You know, it's so easy for me to hear another victim and survivor story and give out advice, but the power of that advice, I've got to do it myself. And so that's what I've been doing, and I just wanted to share that with you today, because I wanted to actually show you that I do, even though it's difficult, I do listen and live by my own advice. So that's what I've been doing for the last 3 weeks, is having a holiday, resting up, but I have also been working. Whilst I was on holiday, I actually read quite a few books. And you know, guys, holidays are not for that, are they? Holidays are for relaxing and having time with your family and enjoying yourself. But as a victim and survivor, you cannot put down what you've been through, especially if it's ongoing, especially if you've got like an ongoing police case, or you work in this field. You can't just put it down. It's not something that you can just put down and pick up again, even if you want to. It's really important that people understand this, general public understand this, professionals understand this. It's not something that you can just pick up and put down. It is part of you. Now, we need to get to a point though in our lives where you are able to work with it, and you're able to live a life that is past abuse. It's not all about the abuse. The abuse doesn't define you. It doesn't impact you on a day-to-day basis, where it is you're just living, you're existing, you're not actually enjoying your life. So we all need to get to a place where we are actually enjoying our lives, but there might be episodes of impact, and that's what I've been going through. I've gone through an episode of impact, and I wanted to acknowledge that, I wanted to recognise that, and I wanted to share that with you. Anyway, so the work that I have been doing, I have been reading books, academic books, as well as people's truths, people's autobiographies. So I'm going to find on Facebook in a moment what I wrote about the books that I read whilst I was on holiday. But I also wanted to speak to you today about the inquiry, what it is and how you can get involved. Because, Power Extra Radio, for example, the radio show that I'm delivering at the moment is my radio show. It's the Breaking the Cycle radio show, but the actual station is Power Extra Radio. And it is a black radio show station. It encourages anybody to come and present, for example, myself. But what I wanted to do with my work with the inquiry, IICSA, Independent Inquiry into Child Sexual Abuse, was to reach out to diverse communities. So not just the white community, but to black communities, Asian communities, Jewish communities, hard of hearing communities, any community that hasn't had a voice yet, hasn't come forward and shared their truths with the inquiry. And as I go on, I will show you that the breadth of stories or lived experiences that are coming forwards at the moment don't have everybody's voice in them. So part of my outreach that I've taken upon myself is to have this radio show so that I can reach out to many more victims and survivors, to enable them, if they want to, come forwards and share their voice. So yesterday, for example, I was travelling up to Rotherham to take part in a focus group around child sexual exploitation, and my input there was to share my lived experiences and what other people have told me about what recovery should look like. So for example, in Rotherham, and they've done this in Nottingham as well, and I want other counties and towns to take this on board, is they have, or they are listening to victims and survivors. They're looking at what the needs are for victims and survivors in their recovery, and they're looking at prevention as well. But I went up there to talk about what recovery looks like. So we were looking at what services are in the area, statutory and non-statutory. What are victims and survivors saying they need to recover? What is available and what isn't available, and what should be available? And bearing in mind that, you know, funding has been cut in every area, in policing, in local councils, in the third sector. Funding has been cut everywhere. So we all know that the needs, or the need for victims and survivors, has increased massively because more and more people are coming forwards. But at the same time, we have cuts everywhere. So with an increase in need and a decrease in funding, what are we meant to do? What is the solution? Now, Rotherham, for example, and Nottingham have done this. The CCG, the commissioning groups, the PCC, the Police and Crime Commissioner, the councils have come together to pool their resources, i.e. their money, for example, to see how they can best put forwards a pathway or a care package that's going to really address the needs of victims and survivors in their particular area. And this obviously needs to be done nationwide. And I have been part of the London Care Pathway focus groups over the last year. And victims and survivors have come forwards. Statutory and non-statutory, i.e. third sector charity organisations have come forwards. They have shared what they need. They have shared what is on offer. And now the statutory and non-statutory agencies have to work together to deliver what victims and survivors are saying that they need. And the funding has got to come from different sources, but the different sources of funding have different criteria for what you can apply for, and they want an easy life. And unfortunately, the funding situation for victims and survivors has been so complicated over a few decades now that they're finding it really hard to come up with the right amount of funding that is needed to address the actual problem, the actual challenges, the root cause of a lot of symptoms, which is child sexual abuse and child sexual exploitation and domestic violence, for example. Now, there has been a lot of funding and a lot of resources put into domestic violence, and so there should. There's been a lot of funding and attention been put into FGM, for example, and so there should. But one area that consistently is ignored, or not ignored, but brushed under the carpet, is child sexual abuse. Now, even child sexual exploitation and transgender as a topic has been highlighted, blown up in the media, and reacted to by, what should we say, the establishment, i.e. police, i.e. government, local councils, government. But the overriding big problem that we have in England and Wales is this underlying epidemic, pandemic, whatever you want to call it, child sexual abuse. And this is what needs to be addressed. And the reason I feel that they're not addressing it is because it's going to take an investment of resources, an investment of money, an investment of people, an investment of legislation change, an investment of so many different things. They're so big that people don't even know where to start. And that is my gut feeling, is that this is a huge problem. And until government, whichever government, and it needs to be cross-party, until government start looking at the long-term costs and a long-term investment plan into this, I can't see it having real change that is needed. Because we all know governments, you know, they're in government for 5 years once they get elected, and all they do in their manifestos is come up with short-term plans and short-term funding for things, and that's how they get into government for another reign, so to speak. If people see that they do a good job in the short term, then we invest again in them for the long term. However, if we truly want to tackle child sexual abuse, which includes sexual exploitation, that includes FGM, it includes so many things, we need to have a long-term plan, cross-party support for tackling child sexual abuse. So we need to keep bringing awareness to this, and we also need to keep having these conversations. Now, if you're listening on the radio, I'm having messages on my Facebook Live. So let me just check out what people are saying on Facebook so that I can bring you some comments. Right. Let's see if I can get in. So please bear with me. Now, if you've got any thoughts on what I've said already, please get in touch. Still trying to get into my Facebook. I view my profile. I'm on my side. I don't know how to tackle that, so if my good friend Mo could come up and help me, that would be great, but I don't know how to put myself that's not on my side. Okay, guys, I'm going to move on. So, 2 weeks ago, I was part of an introductory forum for new members for the inquiry, and I also saw some faces there that I have seen on my visit around the country and at other meetings that I've been to. So it was really nice to see some faces that I've seen before on different meetings that I've been to, and also some new forum members. And what we did on that introductory forum for the inquiry, IICSA, was to share with them how the inquiry came about, where we're at the moment with the public hearings, with research, with the Truth Project, and we were talking about what recommendations that we want to come out of the inquiry as well. Now, at the end of the day, recommendations that come out of the inquiry are going to come from the chair and the panel, but they will only make recommendations that are backed up by the research that the inquiry are doing, that are backed up by people sharing their experiences via the Truth Project, and backed up by what they hear in the public hearings. So all three arms of the inquiry are important because each one backs up the other. The public hearings are really important to show what is happening within institutions and how these institutions over the decades have responded to child sexual abuse or not. And the inquiry, after every public hearing that they have, they produce a report like this one. So the report that I'm holding up at the moment is the ample fourth and downside report. It's the English Benedictine Congregation case study, and it was produced in August 2018. Now, there are no recommendations in this particular publication because they have to hear from another case study, and then they will put their recommendations in the next report after they've heard everything that they need to hear. They can't make recommendations on half of what they need to hear. They have to hear the whole picture and then make recommendations based on what they're actually told in the public hearings via the Truth Project and through the research project. So that is where they're at the moment. So the public hearings are really important, but not everybody, well, I would say only a small percentage of victims and survivors will actually have their voice heard through the public hearing. So how can all victims and survivors have the opportunity to be heard? You can be heard via the Truth Project. Now, the Truth Project is not like going to the police and reporting your abuse to someone that's going to take it further. The Truth Project is about you sharing what happened to you to someone in a position of maybe what you consider power, because at the end of the day, the inquiry are going to use what they've heard from the Truth Project to make recommendations. So it's your opportunity to share your truth with an organisation that will hear you, not judge you, not break up or tear apart what you've said, because at the end of the day, the police have to do that because it's evidence-based. They have to do that. Whereas with the inquiry, when you go through the Truth Project, what you say is not torn apart at all. It's taken at face value. You're not interrogated about what you want to say or share. You can share what you want and you can walk away when you want. And to a certain extent, you can do that with a police case as well. You can leave, but it's a different process. When you go to the Inquiry's Truth Project, as I said, you can share what you want, when you want, and you can leave when you want. It's about you. It's about empowering you to share what you want. And it's about making sure that your voice is heard. And every voice that's heard through the Truth Project builds upon the bigger picture. It enables the inquiry to see the breadth of abuse that's has taken place and it continues to take place. And it gathers information about the type of organisation, for example, where the abuse has taken place, what type of abuse has taken place. It gives us a picture of the perpetrators of abuse. It gives us a picture of what has happened where there's best practice or where there has been complete and utter failure in safeguarding children. It then gives the victim and survivor that comes forwards the opportunity to share with the inquiry what they feel would have made a difference for them if it was in place when they reported or when they didn't report, or what would have enabled them to report. So you can actually tell the inquiry what recommendations you feel would better protect children of today by sharing your experience, by sharing what didn't happen for you. We can look at what has been put in place right now, what has not been put in place, and what needs to be put in place. So that is the importance of people coming forwards. Now, I'm going to put a tune on in a minute because this gets really heavy. So it's really important that the public hearings are there because it really brings to the fore the failures of institutional responses to child sexual abuse. But it's also really important that victim and survivors that are not having their voices heard through the public hearings to come forwards, if they want to share what's happened to them, to enable us as a society, as institutions, to better protect children of today and tomorrow. But the research is just as important, because without the research to back up what people are saying, government and institutions will find it really easy to get out of putting in place what needs to be put in place. But with the research, they're going to find it really hard to get out of putting in place what we actually need. Does that make sense to you all? Anyway, so guys, I'm going to put on a tune and I'm going to try and sort out my social media, because I think I'm still upside down. Doesn't affect you guys listening on the radio, but it does affect the people that are actually watching. So I'm going to put on All Summer Long, because it's a nice long song. So if you are hearing, if you are listening on the Power Extra Radio app, then please enjoy this song. And if you are on Facebook Live, please bear with me whilst I'll get you up the right way. All right, so here's the tune. And I will be back with the Facebook Livers in 5 minutes.
Okay.
Hello and welcome back to Breaking the Cycle radio show. So we was just listening to a tune just to break up some of this heavy conversation. So before the tune, we were discussing the inquiry and how people can get involved. Now, I was at two events yesterday, and one of the events that I was at, people were a bit confused about the inquiry, so I've cleared that up a little bit for you, just saying there's three strands: the public hearings, the Truth Project and the research project, and at the end of the day they are all as equally as important as each other, and they will all feed in to the recommendations that the inquiry will be making. So I use my experiences and what I read, see and hear to inform my work, and whoever I have a conversation with, it expands my knowledge, it expands my understanding, and I take all of this back along with all the other VSCP members and feed this all back to the inquiry. So for example, some victim and survivors that have been through the Truth Project, if things have gone well for them, I've fed that back, and if things have not gone so well for them, I have fed that back, and I've been able to sort out any challenges or problems that people might have had. So it's been really important for me to be that link between victim and survivors and the inquiry, to make sure that we as survivors have the best experience that we possibly can get. You know, we are sharing really in-depth lived experiences that can be quite triggering and traumatizing for us. So it's really important that we feel heard, we feel believed, we feel not judged, and we are then able to use our pain for something positive. And that's really, really important, is to use what we've been through to drive change for children of today and of tomorrow. Now, when I was in Rotherham yesterday in the focus group, we was looking at what does justice look like for you, for me, for everybody in the room, and for all of you listening to the radio show or on Facebook Live. What does justice actually look like for you? I would love to hear your comments, guys. And I also want to know, what does recovery look like for you? Because even though we are victim and survivors of childhood sexual abuse, childhood physical abuse, childhood mental abuse, bullying, domestic violence, we have all different experiences, different impacts. Some can overlap and be the same, but we are all different because we've all been brought up differently. We've all got different backgrounds, we've all got different cultures, we've all got like different religions. How has what you've been through impacted you, and what would recovery look like for you because of what you've been through? And what does justice look like for you because of what you've been through? Now, these are really important questions, and it's going to be different for everybody. And I would love to hear your thoughts on all of that, because I want to start really teasing all of that out in future shows. As I said, I was sitting at home prepping for today's show because I've got a lot that I want to say. So, people coming forward to the Truth Project so far, mainly been from the white community. And as I've been quite clear, one of my reasons for coming onto a black radio show was to outreach to different communities. And this just was an opportunity that came up, so I took it. Now, part of my role with the inquiry is to outreach to diverse communities, BAME communities. And part of that is looking at, this is what the inquiry has to offer, but what are the barriers for different communities in taking part with the inquiry? What are the barriers for you that take part? This is not about recruitment for the Truth Project. This is about raising awareness that this inquiry is happening. This is what they can offer you as within their remit. And if you, as a victim or survivor of child sexual abuse, from wherever you come from, whatever background, whatever culture, whatever community, if you want your voice heard, if you want to take part, how can we make that best for you? What barriers are in place? What is stopping you from coming forwards and sharing your truth? That's all I'm here for, to raise awareness that here is an opportunity for you to take part, but you can't take part for whatever reason. What is that reason? Is it something that is within our remit to remove, to enable you to come forwards and take part? Now, I have many friends from different cultures, communities, and they say that some of the barriers, and this isn't all the barriers, this is just a selection of barriers, you know, in our culture or our community, it's our business. So we're not going to share our business with other people. We don't want to betray our culture. We don't want to bring shame on the family name. We don't want dishonour amongst the community. We don't want to break up the family. We have a mistrust of those in authority for good reason. You know, these are the things that people are sharing with me. But these are a lot of barriers that we have in the white community as well. And we do need to understand what are the barriers for all different communities, and we need to respond to enable those communities to come forwards and share their truths with the inquiry if that's what they want to do. But we're not here to make people come forwards. We are here to listen to those that do want to come forwards and share their truths. Because at the end of the day, if, for example, we hear from 1,000 people or 100 people from a specific community or religion or culture, and they say ABC is happening, and it's happening because of X, Y, and Z, and we feel that if you did EFG, children from this culture, from this background, could be better protected, the inquiry will have what they need to make a recommendation, because they've got people saying what needs to change. They can do research into what people saying needs to change, and then they can make a recommendation based on solid evidence. Does that make sense? I hope it does. I hope I'm coming across clearly. Now, a lot of people that have come to me, especially from the Black community or the Asian community, have said that they want to speak out, but they don't want to portray their culture, They don't want to bring dishonour onto their family. But what I'm saying to this is, I hear you and I understand, but what about the person in that community, in that family that have been abused? What about their rights? What about their mental health? What about their physical health? What about their challenges that they are facing in their life because of their inability to speak up? How are we ever going to break the cycle of how that person or persons have been impacted? And how are we going to stop the impact of child sexual abuse passing down the generations if we don't start challenging today? If we don't start challenging today what is actually going on in our different communities, our different cultures, our different backgrounds, how are we going to change things if we don't actually start speaking about it and raising awareness? We can only put solutions in place to a problem if we know about it, raise awareness about it, have discussions about it, and discuss the challenges and actually start putting in place solutions. Now, for me, stopping the cycle of abuse through education, just by actually saying child sexual abuse, childhood abuse, mental and physical, should not be normal. It is not legal. So why are we allowing it to happen within our communities? Why are we? For me, this quote says it all. The reputation of the family, the reputation of the institution, the reputation of the community is put above the safeguarding and protection of children. And that is so, so, so wrong. The safeguarding and protection of children should be always put above the reputation of anything. My opinion. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Why do you agree? Why do you disagree? Guys, come on, let's start having a conversation. That's what I'm here for. Now, to find solutions to any problem, we have to acknowledge that there is a problem. We need to understand the challenges and complexities of the problem. We need to listen to those who are victims, survivors, or people that are part of the problem, i.e. those working within the system. We need to start listening to whistleblowers. There needs to be protection for whistleblowers. There needs to be people who will stand up and say, this ain't right. I'm not going to stand by and be complicit in any of this. I am going to, we are going to have zero tolerance to this, and we are going to make sure that the procedures, that the policies, that the laws that we have in place are followed. We are going to make sure that we follow through with what we say is true safeguarding. And we all work together towards solutions to child sexual abuse, child sexual exploitation. Now, these solutions, when they are implemented, they need to be monitored, they need to be evaluated, they need to be tweaked, and then the cycle continues. We can't just put in place solutions to a problem and then not follow up on it. We can't do that. It just doesn't make sense. And this is one of the challenges that's going to be faced by the inquiry. Solutions, i.e. recommendations, are going to come out of this inquiry. It's come out of lots of other inquiries, but someone needs to be around to make sure that the solutions that have been implemented are monitored, they're evaluated, and they are tweaked. Otherwise, what is the point? What is the point? Me and others out there, so many of us that want to see policies, procedures, laws changed. We want to see this inquiry to be a success. We want to see that the recommendations that this inquiry comes out with, we want to see them implemented. We need to see that they're being monitored and evaluated. We need to make sure that what we are all sharing via our experiences through the Truth Project, through the public hearings, and what we're learning from the research, we need to make sure that that is all put in place for the future safeguarding of the next generation, of this generation and the next generation. But we need to make sure as well that people like myself, victims and survivors of child sexual abuse, mental abuse, physical abuse, bullying, domestic violence, we need to make sure that all of that comes under the umbrella sexual violence, we need to make sure that the adults are getting the help that they need. That the parents, so if we are parents, we need to make sure that we've got the parenting skills that we need to make sure that this generation, like my children, your children, are not impacted by what we've gone through. We need to stop the rot, the impact of child sexual abuse. So guys, as I've said, in this first hour, part of my agenda is to share with you the work that I've been doing, my outreach to diverse communities, and how you can get involved with the inquiry if you choose to. That is what I'm here for today, discussing. So if you are a BAME survivor or an organisation and you would like to learn more about the inquiry, or you want to share what has or is happening to you, then please get in touch with the inquiry. Look at the website IICSA.org.uk. Actually, let me just check that. I don't even think it's .org.uk. Let me just check that before I give you the wrong information. This is where having two phones in the room comes in handy. IICSA. I think I'm right, but let me just double check. Don't want to be giving you out. Yeah, I am right. So it's www.iicsa.org.uk. If you want to just look for general information about the inquiry, or if you want to read up on any of the investigations, for example, or if you want to know what the inquiry is doing. If you specifically want to take part in the Truth Project, there is another microsite for the Truth Project, and I'm just calling that up now, so please bear with me. Truth Project. And that is www.truthproject.org.uk. Okay, so there you can go and find out further information. Now, how to get in contact with the inquiry. Now, if you are worried about coming face to face with someone and that is not for you, you can put your experience in writing and you can submit it to the inquiry. You can remain anonymous or you can use an alias. It's completely up to you. But I just want to make sure that as many voices from as many backgrounds, from as many cultures, from as many communities actually get their voice heard. I don't want this inquiry to end and a victim and survivor go, I didn't know about that inquiry. If I did know about that inquiry, then I would have taken part. That's what I don't want to happen. So we are here raising awareness. If you want to get involved, check out those 2 websites. If you want to be heard face to face, get in touch. If you want to send in your anonymized or use an alias, and you want to just to write up what you've been through and you want to send that in, send it in. Now, we need as many voices as possible to be heard because we need to build the big picture. We need to build the bigger picture because we need to inform the recommendations. So please get involved. That's all I'm saying. If you want to speak to me about getting involved, then please message me. I'm more than willing to speak to anyone that wants to get involved with the Truth Project, or want to, if you want the inquiry to come and speak to your organisation, or if there are a few BAME organisations that want to get together and input into the inquiry, we're more than happy to speak with you and engage with you and make that happen. So please do get in touch. Now, I want to put a quick call out for anybody, a victim, survivor, or organisation that helps victims and survivors who wants to come onto the Breaking the Cycle radio show to get in touch with me, and we can speak on the radio show and do a Facebook Live. Either you can be in your full glory or you can just speak and have your voice heard. That's absolutely fine. But I really want to start getting people's voices heard. Yeah. So I would like to extend an invite out to you. So if you want to PM me, DM me, Facebook me, message me, tweet me, then please get in touch. And I would love to have you on the show. The show takes place in Bromley in Kent. It's very easily accessible from London. So if you want to get in touch, then please do. And I would love to have you on my show. We've actually got Dilys Silla from Who Will Hear My Cry on next week. And I can't wait for the lovely Dilys to be on the show, to have her say, for her to share her story with us, and for her to have her say on all things to do with sexual violence, sexual abuse, mental abuse, physical abuse, domestic violence, and the actual work that she does here in the UK and in Ghana. So we've got Dilys on next week, which I'm really looking forward to. So if you want to be part of the show, please get in touch and we will schedule you in. Now, the next hour, I'm going to be talking about the age of consent and its bearing on child sexual exploitation. And again, I would love to have your views on all of this. Okay, so I will be talking about that in a moment after we've had another tune. So please bear with me. If you're on Facebook Live, go and make a cup of tea, have a quick wee, and come back in a little while. So the next tune I will be playing is good old Patrice Swayze number, She's Like the Wind. Hello and welcome back, everybody. So, we are now talking about for the rest of the show really, age of consent and why is this so important. Now, I might not get everything right whilst discussing this, but I will endeavour to do so. So, whilst on holiday, I read this book. I don't know if you can see it. It's called Unprotected: How the Normalisation of Underage Sex is Exposing Children and Young People to the Risk of Sexual Exploitation. It's been written by Norman Wells on behalf of the Family Education Trust. Now, I was sent this probably about 6 months ago, but I just didn't have the time to read it. But when I read it, it really made me think about things that I've not actually thought about much before. But I really wanted to understand how CSE actually comes about. So let me just read you the back of this book. It says, the appalling revelations of systemic child abuse and exploitation in English towns and cities over the past few years have led to a considerable amount of soul searching about the root causes of the crisis. In this report, Norman Wells draws attention to a neglected but critical aspect of the debate. He has drawn together the findings of a series of serious case reviews and an independent inquiry looking at the reasons why the abuse of so many young people was not picked up by professionals. The report is utterly damning. A clear picture emerges of a culture in which underage sexual activity has come to be viewed as a normal part of growing up and seen as relatively harmless as long as it's consensual. Combined with official policies to encourage the confidential provision of contraception to minors, it becomes clear that current approaches aimed at improving teenage sexual health have frequently facilitated and perpetuated the sexual abuse of vulnerable young people. Policymakers and professionals working in sexual health no longer have an excuse to ignore the evidence. It is of the utmost importance that the government takes the findings of this report seriously and undertakes an urgent review of its approach to confidential sexual health services. So quite a long, but really, really important. Now I'm going to endeavour to make not light of this report, but to make it more easily to understand and to ask you your views on it, because there is a lot in this report that I haven't actually thought about myself. And this is why I read books like this, because it's about educating and understanding in order to see the bigger picture, and then understand the full picture so that we can find the right solution. So if we have a true understanding of what's going on, find out what is happening, what isn't happening, what should be happening, then we can put in the right solutions in place. So, what is CSE? So there is a definition of child sexual exploitation. What actually is it? In February 27, after a public consultation, this is what the government says CSE is. Child sexual exploitation is a form of child sexual abuse. It occurs where an individual or group takes advantage of an imbalance of power to coerce, manipulate, or deceive a child or young person under the age of 18 into sexual activity. A, in exchange for something the victim needs or wants, and or B, for the financial advantage or increased status of the perpetrator or facilitator. The victim may have been sexually exploited even if the sexual activity appears consensual. Child sexual exploitation does not always involve physical contact. It can also occur through the use of technology. So that is the most recent revised definition of CSE. And it clearly says it is a form of child sexual abuse, of which we know most of child sexual abuse happens within the family or extended family environment. Yeah, so it can include friends, uncles, aunts, granddads, grandmas. It could, you know, that's the extended family, or someone known to the family that's part of that family. Now, this report that I've held up and showed you, it uses several serious case reviews and the independent inquiry into CSE in Rotherham, and it explores the attitudes of professionals towards sexual activity among minors. Now, what we need to take on board, guys, is, you know, we're all up in arms saying that professionals didn't do their job. And they didn't. But this report explains why they didn't and what needs to happen to make sure that professionals can do their jobs. So, what is a serious case review? I need to give you all this background, guys, in order for us to have a proper discussion. Right, a serious case review is undertaken by a local safeguarding children's board, LSCB, where A, abuse or neglect of a child is known or suspected, and B, either the child has died or the child has been seriously harmed and there is a cause for concern as to the way in which the authority, their board partners, or other relevant persons have worked together to safeguard the child. The final decision as to whether a serious case review is initiated rests with the chair of the LSCB. The lead reviewer should be suitably qualified and independent of the LSCB and the organisations involved in the case. The LSCB is responsible for ensuring that there is an appropriate representation in the review process of professionals and organisations who were involved with the child and family. The objective is to identify important factors in the case with a view to agreeing an action plan for necessary improvements to be made. Where possible, the LSCB should aim to complete the serious case review within 6 months. The report should then be published on the website for a minimum of 12 months and made available upon request thereafter. The final report should provide a sound analysis of what happened in the case and why, and what needs to happen in order to reduce the risk of occurrence, be written in plain English and in a way that can be easily understood by professionals and the public, and be suitable for publication without needing to be amended or redacted. So, that is a serious case review. Now, the serious case reviews that were included in this document, this booklet here, was a review of what was happening in Torbay in 2013, a review that was happening in Liverpool in 2013, Rochdale 2013, Rotherham 2014, Thurrock 2014, Oxfordshire 2015, Hampshire 2015, Bristol 2016. So, and they're just 8 towns where these case reviews were happening. There will be a case review, guys, for every single town in this country, England and Wales. There will be. There will be in Scotland, and if this existed worldwide, there will be in every town around the world. There just would be, because child sexual abuse is a massive problem. It's prevalent, it's pandemic, it's epidemic, it's whatever. It's there. It's been here for centuries. And believe it or not, according to the history that I've been reading around child sexual abuse, children of today are better protected than they've ever been. Yet we still got massive failure. But children of today, even us, you know, I'm 48, even us have been better protected than we've ever been over the centuries. Just wanted to let you know that, so you can just see, you know, we've come a long way, but we've got a long way to go. Now, the evidence, excuse me, the evidence that has been gained from these serious case reviews and the independent inquiry into Rotherham, the child sexual exploitation that happened in Rotherham between 1997 and 2013. These are the common themes. A presumption that sexual activity involving children of a similar age or within an age gap of just a few years is consensual and will not normally involve child sexual exploitation. A failure to recognise that sexual activity between young people of similar ages may still involve abuse or exploitation. A culture in which underage sexual activity was not challenged and hence became normalised. A failure on the part of professionals to raise questions about underage sex or even about the identity of the father when presented with a pregnant teenager under the age of 16. A culture in which the response of professionals to underage sex was frequently limited to the confidential provision of contraception in order to reduce the risk of pregnancy or sexually transmitted infection. The disparity between the age at which children may access contraception and the age at which they are legally able to give consent to sexual activity. So what this one was saying, guys, was that we are encouraging children to have access to contraception to prevent unwanted pregnancy and to prevent sexually transmitted disease, but we haven't highlighted the fact that actually sex under the age of 16 is actually illegal, and we've not been promoting that fact. We've not been, as a society, living by that fact. We have, amongst the health professionals, amongst the healthcare setting and other settings, just sort of promoted the rights to have access to birth control in order to prevent unwanted pregnancies and sexually transmitted diseases. But at the end of the day, we have not actually said, this 13-year-old child that is coming to me pregnant or with an unwanted sexual infection, actually she's 13, actually what she's done is illegal. Okay, we're not going to take any action against that she's had sex, but who's she been having sex with? Who's the father of this baby? How has she caught this sexually transmitted disease? So people, professionals, have not been asking the questions because there is a disparity between the age or the access to contraception and the age that we are legally allowed to have sex. So another common theme is confusion over the interpretation and implementation of the Fraser Guidelines in relation to the routine provision of contraception to under 16s. this has contributed to child sexual exploitation. An expectation that under 16s will be sexually active, meaning that access to sexual health services under the age of consent was regarded as normal and positive, and therefore failed to trigger any consideration of the possibility that girls might be suffering abuse. And this could go for boys as well, but this was just from the case reviews. Young people feeling let down by professionals prioritising patient confidentiality over safeguarding. So this point was basically young people having their confidentiality put before the safeguarding of those children. So, yeah. These are the young people that have come forward that have said that professionals put their confidentiality before safeguarding. So these are the young people who are actually saying, why wasn't safeguarding of me put before my confidentiality? That's what I'm reading that as. A tendency to dismiss parental concerns and to regard parents as part of the problem. So in this CSE within the towns around the country, parents were coming forwards and sharing what was going on for them and their children. But rather than the parents being acknowledged as having true concerns with what was going on with the children, professionals were actually saying the parents were part of the problem. And this also needs to be addressed. Children being treated as adults with the competence and autonomy to make their own choices in relation to sexual activity. So these were the themes, guys, that came out of these serious case reviews that happened up and down the country that I shared with you. Now, the age of consent, guys, where professionals are having problems or saying, you know, that they work within their parameters with their safeguarding, this is where this is all coming from. So, the age of consent. Throughout the United Kingdom, the age of consent to sexual activity is 16. Now, when I was reading up on the history of child sexual abuse, the age of consent was revised to 13 in 1875, and it was raised to the age of 16 in 1885. Now, I've yet to read why the age of consent was set at that age, for what reasons, and I will come back to you in a different programme about that, but I'm just giving you the history. Now, in the words of the CPS, the Crown Prosecution Service, in their guidelines, any sexual activity involving consenting children under 16 is unlawful. The CPS also states that the age of consent is 16. Because children can and do abuse and exploit other children, the Sexual Offences Act 2003 makes it an offence for children under 16 to engage in sexual activity to protect children who are victims. Okay, so it clearly says in law that under 16 it is illegal to take part in sexual activity, and this is to protect children. However, it also says that the expectation that consensual sexual activity involving two teenagers, where one or both parties are under the age of 16, will not be prosecuted. it should be noted that where both parties to sexual activity are under 16, then they may have committed a criminal offence. However, the overriding purpose of the legislation is to protect children, and it was not Parliament's intention to punish children unnecessarily for the criminal law to intervene where it was wholly inappropriate. Consensual sexual activity between, for example, a 14 or 15-year-old and a teenage partner would not normally require criminal proceedings in the absence of aggravating features. The relevant considerations include the respective ages of the parties, the existence and nature of any relationship, their level of maturity, whether any duty of care existed, whether there was a serious element of exploitation. So they're saying that if both parties were under the age of 16 and there was consent and there was no coercion, there was no abuse of power, if both parties were mature enough, if there was no duty of care there, and there was no exploitation, that a relationship in that regard would not be deemed a criminal offence, but in any other regard it would. So why then, when we have a clear law, does child sexual exploitation and child sexual abuse exist, and why do people get away with it? So there's lots of reasons for this. Okay. Now, some of the reasons why CSE has happened over the decades is because of different reasons that are pointed out in this report. And they come up with different recommendations that the government need to adhere to. And I'm just going to go through some of this with you because I want to give you the bigger picture. As I've said, this is educational for me as well as everybody that's listening or watching. Sexual activity under the age of 16 has become commonplace in spite of the fact that it is unlawful. For decades, the law on the age of consent has been, at best, largely ignored and at worst, treated with contempt. If young people are aware of the law at all, they know that it is extremely unlikely to be enforced, and so it has lost its power to restrain as much as it has been deprived of its capacity to protect. On top of that, the confidential provision of contraception, sexual health advice, and even abortions without reference to parents is sending out a powerful message that sexual activity under the age of 16 meets with the full approval of the health establishment. The same message is also being reinforced in many schools by the adoption of sex and relationship education favoured and promoted by local authorities. Official guidance documents produced by professional bodies and government agencies are playing their part in condoning underage sexual activities by advising school nurses and GPs that under 16s have the same right to confidentiality in matters relating to contraception as sexual health as any other patient. So even though we've got a law that says it's illegal, we've got policies and guidance documents, official guidance documents saying that underage sex is actually okay. And that has made the job of protecting children really difficult. So this report goes on, guys, to actually say, right, where am I? In its recommendations, okay, recommendation 1, the CPS should review its guidance with a view to ensuring that due rigour is restored to the law on the age of consent. Revised guidance should ensure that consensual sex between children and young people under the age of 16 is not condoned, and that appropriate action is taken to ensure that those who engage in underage sex are left in no doubt that they have committed a criminal offence and cautioned accordingly. It's not saying that action should be taken for children who come under what I've already explained, that they should be have a criminal record for it, but to restore protection via that bit of law, via that bit of law, to put a value back on that law, that we need to start saying, actually, it's illegal to have sex under the age of 16. And we start changing the culture going forward by reinstating the importance of that bit of legislation. Sexual Offences Act 2003 as well, page 69, guys, I want to share with you. Under the terms of the Act, health professionals, teachers, advisors, youth workers, social practitioners, parents and anyone else acting to protect a child are deemed to be not guilty of aiding, abetting or counselling a sexual offence against a child where they are acting for the purpose of protecting a child from pregnancy or sexually transmitted infection, protecting the physical safety of a child, promoting a child's emotional well-being by the giving of advice, the confidential provision of contraceptions to young people under the legal age of consent is thus justified on the basis that may help the child to avoid becoming pregnant or contracting a sexually transmitted infection. So even though we've got this law that says sex under the age of 16 is illegal, we've got further acts that actually say that professionals are not guilty of aiding and abetting if they are protecting a child from pregnancy or a sexually transmitted infection, protecting the physical safety of a child, or promoting a child's emotional well-being by giving that advice. So that was put into the Sexual Offences Act 2003 to protect professionals, but at the expense of actually protecting children from child sexual exploitation. Because it's become the norm and the culture now to give children confidentiality, to provide them with protection against disease, sexual diseases and unwanted pregnancies, but no one's hearing the bigger message that it's illegal. Yeah, it's illegal. And that bit of protection needs to get out there and be heard by everybody, because when all professionals hear it's illegal, then their response to helping children will be different. It will be different. It has to be different, because even though that child has confidentiality rights, if the message is children under the age of 16, it's illegal to have sex, then the professional's response to that will be, who are you having sex with? Why are you having sex with them? Do you know it's actually illegal? And then they get the right help and interventions that they need. They get the right education, they get the right help. Professionals act in the right way. The perpetrators of the abuse that is happening, they get reported. The whole system has turned on its head. The law is not strong. The law is being undermined by what we've done over the course of time. The sex education that we're given in schools is undermining the message or that law that is illegal under the age of 16 to have sex. Now, they're not saying that they're going to, if you are under the age of 16 and you have a relationship with another teenager, for example, and it's consensual and there's no other mitigating circumstance, they're not saying that they're going to take any action against you. But what it will send out, it will send out a clear message that it's being monitored, it's being evaluated, and if there is true abuse taking place, if there is true exploitation of that person taking place, then something can be done about it. Because at the moment, everybody, well, under the you know, if I'm a practitioner, under the Sexual Offences Act 2003, it clearly says that if someone comes to me for sex advice or protection, then I can give them anonymity and I can do X, Y, and Z. But that is not protecting the child from sexual exploitation or sexual abuse, is it? It's not. It's sorting out the problems that they've got now, and it's actually encouraging a relationship that might be abusive. So I'm hoping I'm getting this across clearly to you guys, and I really want your input into this, because at the end of the day, if we want to uphold a law, we need to make sure that everybody understands why that law was put in place in the first place. It is to protect children from child sexual abuse and child sexual exploitation. Yeah? That's what it's there for. But we have done everything as a society to undermine that by giving the child confidentiality, by not sharing what that child is going through with the parents. And I'm talking about parents here that are responsible parents. I'm not talking about parents that are abusive, yeah? We've taken away the right of the parent to know about what's going on for their child. We've given the child access to contraception readily, freely available. We're saying it's okay to go out there and have these sexual relationships. And I've clearly explained that teenage relationships that are consensual and have no abuse of power in them is okay. That's what this document's saying, and that's what has happened over time. People have readily accepted, you know, that children, teenagers, 14-year-olds, 15-year-olds, 16-year-olds do have sex with each other. And if the relationship is based on consent, and if it's based on, you know, an equal balance of power, if there's no imbalance of power, then it's okay. They won't be or have any action taken against them, because that's happened over time. But it's, where do we stand today? Where do we stand today on actually making sure that child sexual exploitation doesn't happen, child sexual abuse doesn't happen? It's happening because of the way everything has evolved over time, and it's gone too far the other way. So what this, you can actually buy, if you're really wanting to read this, guys, Unprotected, it's £7.50, sorry, and you can get it from the website familyeducationtrust.org.uk. You can get your own copy and you can read it, and I would love to have someone else's opinion on this actually. But so some of these recommendations, guys, coming out of this book. I've already said, number one, the CPS should review its guidance and get rid of the bit under the terms of the Act, the Sexual Offences Act 2003. Recommendation 2, the Department of Health should review its guidance on the provision of advice and treatment to young people under 16 on contraception, sexual and reproductive health. There should be no further provision of contraceptive advice to young people under the age of 16. Where sexually active young people under the age of consent are seeking advice in relation to sexually transmitted infections or abortion, there should be a requirement that their parent or legal guardian is notified. Recommendation 3. Home Office ministers should conduct a review of Section 14 of the Sexual Offences Act 2003 with a view to removing the exemption for sex educators and contraceptive providers from charges of arranging or facilitating commission of a child sex offence. Recommendation 4. The GMC should amend its guidance for GPs to ensure that there is no further provision of contraceptive advice and treatment for children and young people under the age of 16. Recommendation 5. The Department of Education, Department of Health and Public Health, England, should amend their guidance for school nurses and other health professionals to ensure that there is no further provision of contraceptive advice and treatment for children and young people under the age of 16. Recommendation 6. The Department of Education should write to all schools stressing the need to consult parents about their sex and relationship education provision in line with current departmental guidance. Schools should be advised that they must uphold and teach the law on the age of consent, and they must not in any way condone sex under the age of 16. They must rather encourage pupils to have due regard to moral considerations and the value of family life, and teach the nature of marriage and its importance for family life and the bringing up of children. Recommendation 7. The Department of Education should review its decision to promote the supplementary advice produced by the Sex Education Forum, PSHE Association, and Brooke in view of its lack of regard for moral considerations, marriage and family life, its ambivalence towards parents, and its endorsement of the Brooke Sexual Behaviours Traffic Light Tool. Now, again, some of these recommendations, guys, you might not agree with because you're not getting the whole picture. You really need to understand where this book is coming from. So you need to read it really for yourselves. I don't agree with all these recommendations, but I'm just reading out what the recommendations are. So this is one recommendation that I don't agree with. Recommendation 8. Sex and relationship education should not be made a statutory part of the school curriculum. I disagree. I think it should. In view of the sensitive nature of the subjects involved, they should be viewed as the primary responsibility of parents. No, it shouldn't. Now, I get where they're coming from, where they're making this recommendation in the context of child sexual exploitation. But what I feel they haven't grasped is that most abuse takes, place in the family home or family environment. So if it's the primary responsibility of parents to teach their children about sex and relationship education, then those people that are abusing their children in the family environment, the intrafamilial environment, they won't do that, will they? No. So I think that schools do need to be take a big role in the education of our children, but we need to make sure that it covers healthy relationships, what abuse is and what abuse isn't, what CSA is, what CSE isn't, what does a good relationship look like? What is consent? What isn't consent? All of those things. It needs to have all of those elements in its education, so that children do understand that there is an act, there is law. The law of no sex under the age of 16 is there to protect, but in these circumstances, no action will be taken against you. But in these circumstances, people who are abusing you will have action taken against them. There needs to be that education out there. So I do agree that parents should have a say in what their children are being taught, but at the end of the day, children need to have that third party input into what sex and relationship education should be, in order to protect children from abuse within the family home, abuse with outside of the family home. It needs to be bigger than that. Now, right, recommendation 9. The Department for Education should not recommend the PSHE Association's guidance on the teaching of consent in schools in view of the mixed messages it communicates on the age of consent. So again, I agree that the age of consent needs to have a clear message around it, and that everybody needs to be singing off the same song sheet. Recommendation 10. The Department for Education and Department of Health should review all their guidance and other literature in relation to sex and relationships education and sexual health advice to ensure that it does not contain any suggestion that children and young people have a right to sexual activity or to services designed to support sexual relationships under the age of 16. Now again, I still believe that children under the age of 16 who have relationships should have access to condoms and advice not to get pregnant, etc., etc. But at the same time, it shouldn't be the norm, and it shouldn't be culture. It shouldn't be a cultural practice, because this is how CSE has evolved and become the massive problem that it is. Recommendation 11. All government departments and public funded agencies should ensure that all guidance and policy documents relating to children and young people give explicit recognition to the role of parents or legal guardians as the primary providers, protectors and caregivers of their children. Children and young people should not be regarded and treated as autonomous individuals, but members of a family. And again, I agree on one hand and I don't agree on the other. Yes, parents, if they're not abusive, should be the primary providers and protectors and caregivers of their children, but we know that 80% of child abuse happens within the family home and family environment. So I don't wholly agree with this recommendation. Recommendation 12. The Department of Health, Department for Education, Home Office and any other government department or agency concerned with the protection of children and young people should ensure that all training materials and guidance should be, they're actually going against using the Brooks Sexual Behaviours Traffic Light tool. And again, you'll have to look that up, guys, because I don't know about this tool, but it seems to be being adopted by these agencies, and it is not in the best interests of prevention of child sexual exploitation. This is what this published document is saying. And recommendation 13, all government departments should ensure that any safeguarding tool and any advice or guidance that they provide or signpost places a strong emphasis on the age of consent and in no way communicates the message that sexual activity under the age of 16 is a legitimate choice worthy of positive feedback. So I've brought a lot to your attention today in this radio show, and I would love your feedback on it. If you want to get a copy of this and read it for yourselves and come back to me, then please do. That'd be great. I would love any comments and feedback. Please put them under the Facebook live feed, or if you want to contact me via the radio station, please do. Studio number for future reference is 07583. If you want to email us, you can. christuck@powerextraradio.co.uk, or you can get me on social media, Facebook or Twitter. Now, to recap, if children and young people do not understand and grow up with understanding that the law is sex is illegal under the age of 16, a culture of this will be allowed, and it will become normal, and it seems to have become normal, and normal will be adopted. So in order to protect children in the future, we need to understand the law and how the law has been interpreted through policies and procedures and practice, and why people in a professional capacity are not actually able to safeguard children because of the policies and the practices that have been adopted. And we also need to go back to basics and say this law was put in place for a reason. It was to protect children. If there is an underage sexual relationship that is happening, and there will be, then you won't be prosecuted for that. But if there is a relationship that is abusive in its nature, then you will be. Yeah, we need clear black and white literature on this, and the people in a professional capacity need to abide by this, and children need to understand that there is a law, and they need to understand what a relationship is, healthy, unhealthy, what consent is, what help they can get, what help they can access, what is the parents' role in all of this, what is the school's role in all of this, what is society's role in all of this. There's so many questions, so much needs to be discussed, but at the end of the day, we need solutions, we need recommendations that are going to make change, that is going to positively impact and protect our children today and tomorrow. So I'd love to hear your views, everyone. Love to hear your views. I will come back on the comments that anyone has made, or get in touch with me. And I am now going to wrap it all up. I've got 2 minutes before I play my closing jingle. I just wanted to come back to the independent inquiry into child sexual abuse and just say to you guys that this report is now out. It's the ample fourth and downside English Benedictine congregation case study, and I'm going to read up on this during the week, and I'm going to bring you my report on that next week, because it clearly shows and depicts the abuse, the sexual abuse, the mental abuse and physical abuse that went on in Ampleforth and Downside, and it's just another institution where abuse has taken place. Now, child sexual abuse takes place in all institutions, in all communities, from people of all backgrounds are victims. People of all backgrounds are perpetrators. We need to wake up to this, guys. The bigger picture is it's prevalent. And as a society, we have to have a zero tolerance to this so that we can start making positive and plausible change to safeguard our children. Now, that's me done. I'm all talked out. I will get back in touch with you all. Love to you all. Please share this Facebook Live. I will upload the radio show onto social media, so please share that. And I will be back with you next week with the lovely Dilys, and Dilys will blow your mind, guys, because she blows my mind. All right, but we will have a good debate next week. All right, gang, go and enjoy the sunshine. And for those who listen on the radio show, here is You Can't Touch This.